Don't drink these 8 Canadian tea brands and 4 that are actually safe. Tea feels harmless. It feels gentle, something you drink when you are sick, stressed, pregnant, or trying to be healthy. That is exactly why this matters. Most people never question tea. They trust the box. The words like natural, organic, calming, premium. They assume boiling water makes everything safe. It does not. I started looking into Canadian tea brands because tea is consumed quietly, daily, and repeatedly. 1 cup becomes 3 years. What I found was uncomfortable. Pesticides hiding behind familiar labels, plastic dissolving into hot water, cheap leaves masked by flavoring, private labels built on cost cutting, not care. And this is not about fear, it is about awareness. Some tea brands sold across Canada expose you to risks you never agreed to. Others actually do things right. In this video, I'll show you 8 Canadian tea brands you should stop buying and 4 that are genuinely safe. After this, you will never look at your tea cabinet the same way again. 12. Tetley Canada, owned by Tata Global Beverages. Tetley is not just another tea brand in Canada. It is one of the most consumed teas in the country, meaning any safety issue is multiplied across millions of households. When a brand reaches that level of saturation, even small quality failures stop being isolated problems and become population-wide exposure events. That alone should raise concern before even looking at test results. CBC Marketplace Investigations previously sent popular tea brands for independent laboratory testing. Tetley stood out for the wrong reasons. Multiple pesticide residues were detected in Tetley tea bags, not trace background amounts, but measurable compounds that should never be casually dismissed. In some tests, up to 22 different pesticide chemicals were detected in a single tea bag. That number matters because food safety regulations do not evaluate chemical exposure as a combined load. Each pesticide is tested in isolation and assigned a legal threshold. Regulators do not test what happens when 22 different chemicals enter the body together, steeped in boiling water, and consumed daily for years. This gap in regulation is not theoretical. It means a product can be technically legal while still exposing consumers to a chemical cocktail that has never been studied in combination. That is not safety. That is regulatory convenience. You should avoid Tetley because long-term exposure is invisible. Drinking 1 cup does nothing noticeable. Drinking 2 cups a day for decades quietly compounds chemical intake without warning signs. This is not panic language, it is basic exposure math. High volume consumption plus chemical stacking equals a risk most people never consciously agree to. And if you think pesticide residue is bad, the next brand adds plastic contamination on top, turning your tea into a chemical and microplastic delivery system. 11. David's Tea. A Canadian brand, global sourcing. David's Tea presents itself as the modern opposite of industrial tea. Bright stores, lifestyle branding, and wellness language suggest a cleaner, safer alternative. That image collapses quickly when you look beyond packaging and into how these teas are actually built and delivered. David's Tea sources ingredients from multiple countries with inconsistent pesticide regulations and enforcement. While global sourcing is not inherently unsafe, the lack of transparent batch testing and public contaminant disclosures leaves consumers blind. There is no easy way to verify pesticide residue levels, heavy metal presence, or storage conditions across such a fragmented supply chain. To compensate for inconsistent leaf quality, David's Tea relies heavily on flavoring, agents, fruit acids, and aroma compounds. These are not fresh fruit pieces doing the work. They are concentrated additives designed to overpower bland or low-grade base leaves. Strong flavor is not a sign of quality. In many cases, it is a sign of correction. The biggest overlooked issue is packaging. Many David's Tea products use plastic pyramid tea bags. When exposed to boiling water, these bags release microplastics directly into the drink. Independent testing has shown that plastic tea bags can release billions of microplastic and nanoplastic particles per cup. These particles are small enough to cross biological barriers and accumulate in the body. Microplastics are not filtered out. They do not disappear. They accumulate over time in blood, organs, and tissues. Drinking tea should hydrate and calm the body, not introduce persistent synthetic debris. Yet consumers steep these bags daily without realizing what else is dissolving into their cup. People drink David's tea because it feels healthy. Influencers promote it. Stores smell clean and modern. Packaging signals mindfulness and self-care. That emotional framing is powerful, and it lowers skepticism. When something looks like wellness, people stop asking safety questions. 10. Twinings Canada, Canadian retail arm. Twinings in Canada trades heavily on prestige. The brand leans on British heritage, royal associations, and centuries of history to signal quality. That image gives people confidence that they are choosing something refined and safe. The problem is that reputation does not change how modern industrial tea is produced, sourced, or processed today. Tea sold under the Twinings name in Canada mirrors international batches that have repeatedly tested positive for high pesticide loads in independent investigations outside Canada. The leaves are sourced from large-scale plantations where chemical spraying is routine, not exceptional. What matters is not whether each chemical sits under a legal limit, but how many are present together in one cup. Twinings does not primarily use whole tea leaves. It relies on tea dust and fannings. The smallest broken fragments left after higher grade leaves are separated. These fragments have far more exposed surface area. That means they absorb pesticides more easily during growth and release them more aggressively when hot water is added. Faster color does not mean better tea. It means everything is dumping into your cup immediately. Another overlooked issue is the tea bag itself. Many Twinings tea bags are bleached to achieve a clean, white appearance. Bleaching introduces chemical residues, and when boiling water hits the bag, those residues do not stay locked in the paper, they migrate into the drink. The bag is not neutral, it becomes part of what you consume. You should avoid Twinings because prestige branding does not reduce contamination risk. It distracts from it. You pay more, but you do not get cleaner leaves, safer sourcing, or better testing transparency. What you get is the same industrial tea model, wrapped in heritage storytelling that encourages trust without proof. If you think prestige hides risk, the next brand is even worse, combining pesticides, plastic exposure, and global mass production at terrifying scale. 9. Lipton, Canada. Lipton is not just another tea brand, it is the most widely distributed tea brand on Earth, and that scale turns every quality problem into a global exposure issue. Greenpeace testing previously found pesticide residues in 100% of Lipton samples tested across multiple countries, not some, every single one. Lipton relies heavily on tea dust rather than whole leaves. Dust is cheaper, easier to transport, and extracts instantly. It is also the worst possible format for chemical exposure. Dust absorbs more pesticides during growth and releases them faster during brewing. What looks like convenience is actually accelerated contamination delivery. Some Lipton tea bags are plastic-based or contain plastic sealing layers. When boiling water is poured over them, they release billions of microplastic and nanoplastic particles into a single cup. These particles are small enough to cross biological barriers. They accumulate in the body over time. They do not dissolve. They do not flush out. You should avoid Lipton because high volume, low quality, and constant exposure compound quickly. One cup seems harmless. Years of daily consumption quietly stack pesticides, plastics, and residues inside the body. Lipton's size does not make it safer. It makes its risks unavoidable. 8. Tim Hortons branded teas. Tim Hortons is not a tea company. It is a fast food corporation applying a fast food sourcing model to a product that is brewed in boiling water and consumed daily. That distinction matters more than most people realize. The tea served and sold under the Tim Hortons brand is designed for speed, consistency, and cost control, not leaf quality or safety. Industrial blends are selected because they deliver fast color and predictable flavor across millions of cups, not because they use whole leaves or careful sourcing. This usually means tea dust and fannings, the lowest grade remnants of tea processing. Many Tim Hortons tea bags are plastic sealed or contain synthetic binding materials. When boiling water hits those bags, heat accelerates the release of microplastics and chemical residues directly into the drink. Unlike coffee filters, tea bags sit submerged for minutes, increasing exposure time. That is not a minor detail. It changes what ends up in your body. There is no public transparency from Tim Hortons regarding pesticide testing, heavy metal screening, or batch-level contamination checks. Consumers are expected to trust the logo and routine, not data. When asked, brands typically reference supplier compliance rather than independent verification. That is not the same thing. People drink Tim Hortons tea because it is familiar. It is part of daily routines, morning commutes, and workplace habits. Familiarity creates comfort, and comfort shuts down scrutiny. Most customers never stop to ask whether fast food standards belong anywhere near something marketed as a calming beverage. You should avoid Tim Hortons branded teas because fast food sourcing is optimized for volume, not safety margins. When cost efficiency meets boiling water, the consumer absorbs the consequences, not the corporation. If fast food tea concerns you, the next brand is worse because it hides behind organic trust, while contamination still slips through quietly. 7. Choice organic teas sold widely in Canada. Choice. Organic teas benefits from one powerful assumption, that organic means safe. That assumption is not just wrong, it is dangerous when it prevents people from asking harder questions. Organic certification restricts how crops are grown, but it does not guarantee zero contamination by the time the tea reaches your cup. Multiple tea products marketed as organic have faced ethylene oxide and pesticide-related recalls internationally. These incidents did not happen because brands lied outright. They happened because contamination occurred during transport, storage, or blending. Tea leaves often cross borders before packaging. They are handled in shared facilities, shipped in bulk containers, and processed alongside non-organic materials. Cross-contamination does not care about labels. Once it happens, certification does not remove the residue. Another issue is testing. Organic certification does not require independent batch-by-batch contaminant testing. It relies on process compliance, not final product analysis. That means problems are often discovered only after regulators intervene or recalls occur. By then, consumers have already been exposed. Choice organic teas are marketed toward health-conscious buyers who believe they are reducing risk. That belief can increase consumption frequency, making any contamination more impactful over time. Trust becomes the delivery system. People drink these teas because the branding signals responsibility and wellness. The word organic lowers defenses. Consumers assume someone else already did the safety work. You should avoid relying on organic labels alone because they are not shields. Without transparent testing results, you are buying faith, not proof. And the next brands are even worse because they combine organic marketing, plastic bags, global sourcing, and zero disclosure into one dangerous illusion. 6. President's Choice Tea, Loblaw Private Label. President's Choice Tea is not built around quality, tradition, or careful sourcing. It is built around margin. As a private label owned by Loblaw, its primary purpose is to generate higher profit per unit by cutting costs upstream while maintaining shelf dominance downstream. Private label products give retailers control over suppliers, pricing, and formulation. That control almost always means cheaper commodity leaves sourced from large plantations, where volume matters more than leaf integrity. These are blended inputs, not selected harvests. The tea is designed to look acceptable, steep fast, and taste familiar, not to be clean, fresh, or traceable. There is very limited public information about where President's Choice tea leaves come from, how old they are when packaged, or what independent contaminant testing is performed. Consumers are asked to trust the Loblaw system rather than evidence. When a retailer owns the shelf, the brand, and the pricing, there is no incentive to disclose uncomfortable details. Commodity tea leaves are typically grown with heavy pesticide use to protect yields across massive acreage. Lower grade leaves also retain more residues because of higher surface area and rough processing. When those leaves are blended across regions, tracing contamination becomes nearly impossible. Any problem is diluted, not eliminated. People buy President's Choice tea because it is cheap, visible, and normalized. It sits next to national brands and signals value. Many shoppers assume it is simply a lower-priced version of the same product. That assumption is where risk enters quietly. You should avoid President's Choice tea because private label economics reward silence, not transparency, and the consumer absorbs every compromise built into that model. The next brand is even worse because it removes brand identity entirely and pushes contamination risk to minimum cost extremes. 5. No-name tea. No-name tea represents the lowest possible cost expression of mass market tea. It removes storytelling, heritage, and quality claims entirely, leaving only price. That simplicity is not honesty. It is a warning label without words. Ultra-low cost sourcing almost guarantees the use of the cheapest commodity leaves available. These leaves are harvested for volume, not integrity, and are often grown on large plantations where heavy chemical use is standard practice. Lower grade leaves have more broken surfaces, which increases pesticide retention and accelerates chemical transfer during steeping. No name provides no meaningful public disclosure about origin, harvest age, pesticide testing, or heavy metal screening. There are no published batch reports, no third-party lab results, and no consumer-facing transparency. The assumption is simple: if the price is low enough, questions stop. People buy no-name tea for one reason: price. It is positioned as the bare minimum option, stripped of aesthetics and emotional appeal. For budget-constrained households, that positioning feels practical. What is rarely considered is what must be removed from the supply chain to reach that price point. When margins are pushed this low, safety buffers disappear first. Testing costs money, traceability costs money, rejecting contaminated batches costs money. The cheapest product is not cheap because it is efficient. It is cheap because safeguards have been minimized. The health risk is not immediate or dramatic, it is cumulative. Drinking low-grade tea occasionally may seem harmless. Drinking it daily for years compounds exposure to residues your body never requested. Children and elderly consumers are particularly vulnerable to that accumulation. After exposing cost-cutting, contamination risks, and opaque sourcing, it is important to show what safe tea actually looks like. These brands do not rely on dust-grade leaves, plastic bags, or marketing illusions. They prioritize traceability, whole leaves, and minimal processing. This is what real safety feels like when companies build trust through practice, not promises. 4. Genuine Tea, Vancouver. Genuine Tea operates on a simple principle that most large brands abandoned long ago. Know the leaf, know the source, and do not interfere with it. Their teas are sold as whole leaves only, which immediately removes many contamination risks associated with dust and fannings. Whole leaves are less absorbent to pesticides and age more predictably. Genuine Tea uses direct trade relationships with farms, meaning they know exactly where the tea comes from and how it is grown. This matters because it reduces the chance of blended mystery batches where problems get hidden instead of fixed. When something goes wrong, accountability is clear. Another critical safety factor is packaging. Genuine Tea does not use plastic tea bags. Loose leaf formats eliminate microplastic exposure entirely. What goes into the cup is leaf and water, nothing else. People drink genuine tea because it tastes cleaner, but the real value is trust. There is no wellness theatre, no vague organic claims, and no trendy distractions. What you see is what you steep. You should choose genuine tea because it minimizes exposure by design. It avoids the shortcuts that create risk in the first place, instead of trying to manage damage after the fact. The next brand goes even further by combining direct sourcing with rigorous tasting standards that reject compromised leaves before they reach customers. 3. Camellia sinensis, Montreal. Camellia sinensis is widely considered Canada's gold standard for tea quality, and that reputation exists for a reason. This company works directly with growers and focuses on terroir, harvest timing, and leaf integrity rather than mass availability. Their teas are not engineered to be cheap or fast brewing. Minimal processing is a key safety advantage. The less a leaf is broken, sprayed, or altered, the fewer opportunities there are for contamination. Camellia sinensis avoids artificial flavoring entirely, which removes another hidden chemical layer common in mass market teas. Their selection process is strict. Leaves that do not meet quality standards simply do not get sold. This is the opposite of industrial blending, where poor material is masked with flavor additives. People drink Camellia sinensis because it feels intentional. The tea takes longer to steep, develops slowly and tastes layered. That slower extraction is not just about flavor, it reduces the dumping effect seen in dust-grade tea. You should choose Camellia sinensis because safety here comes from restraint. Fewer inputs, fewer processes, fewer compromises. It is tea treated as food, not as a commodity. The next brand builds on this approach while making safe tea accessible through small batch blending and clear sourcing disclosures. 2. Pluck Tea, Toronto. Pluck Tea focuses on small batch blending with a strict whole leaf philosophy. This matters because smaller batches are easier to control, inspect, and correct. Problems do not get buried under volume, they get addressed. Pluck avoids pyramid plastic bags, which removes microplastic exposure entirely. Their packaging choices are deliberate and conservative. Nothing flashy, nothing unnecessary. Clear sourcing disclosures are another strength. Pluck does not hide behind vague origin language. Customers can understand where the tea comes from and why it tastes the way it does. That transparency discourages corner cutting upstream. People drink Pluck tea because it feels modern without being careless. The blends are creative but not artificial. Ingredients are recognizable. Nothing is there just to boost aroma or color. You should choose Pluck tea because it balances accessibility with integrity. It proves safe tea does not need to be niche or expensive, it just needs discipline. The next brand is even safer because it brings decades of conservative sourcing culture and traditional processing into every decision it makes. 1. Silk Road Tea, Victoria. Silk Road Tea has built its reputation over decades, not trends. This longevity matters because safety culture takes time to develop. Their sourcing prioritizes traditional processing methods and rejects dust-grade tea entirely. There is a strong emphasis on clean handling and storage. Tea is treated as a fragile agricultural product, not shelf-stable filler. This reduces degradation and chemical persistence. Silk Road does not rely on artificial flavoring. Flavor comes from leaf quality, oxidation control, and proper aging. That restraint lowers the need for chemical masking. People drink Silk Road tea because it feels grounded and honest. There is no urgency marketing, no fear selling, and no exaggerated claims. You should choose Silk Road tea because it reflects what the tea industry used to be before scale erased accountability: quiet, careful, and controlled. That mindset is what safety looks like when profit is not the only priority. So subscribe, like and comment why you like this video for a chance to win a new Apple MacBook.